Welcome back to the third part on William Shakespeare's Macbeth. We have seen that Duncan has been murdered by Macbeth, and Macbeth is now the king of Scotland. Now, in third act, this newly appointed king and queen have decided to host a feast that night. Recalling the witch's second prophecy about Banquo's children assuming the kingship, Macbeth now fears Banquo and his son Fleance. He therefore hires murderers to kill Banquo and his son. The hired murderers manage to kill Banquo, who is on his way to the royal feast organized by the Macbeths. But his son escapes into the night. At the banquet that night, Macbeth is horrified when the ghost of the murdered Banquo appears at the dining table, sitting in the place of King Duncan. Lady Macbeth tries to allay his fears and to strengthen Macbeth, but he is unsettled by the event. This third act shows that the first part of the witch's prophecy that Macbeth would become the king has come true. Galvanized by this result, he now fears Banquo and his son Fleance. Macbeth feels that he must kill his friend Banquo and the young Fleance in order to prevent the second part of the prophecy from being realized. But as Fleance's survival suggests, there can be no escape from the witch's prophecy. Lady Macbeth's slow descent to despair has already started. Now Macbeth speaks the language of his wife. His insecurities propel him to commit more murders, sinking him deeper into damnation. At the same time, his disturbed mind sees Banquo's ghost, revealing his inner turmoil and the fear of his misdeeds. His external bravado has started to crumble now. He briefly realizes that killing settles nothing, but now he has reached that stage where he must continue doing evil deeds. Like many Shakespearean tragedies, throughout Macbeth, the supernatural and the unnatural appear as forerunners of wickedness, moral corruption, and downfall. Here, the appearance of Banquo's ghost symbolizes the political and moral downfall of Scotland and heighten the audience's sense of foreboding and ill omen. In the fourth act, we see that the following day, Macbeth visits the same witches who earlier foretold his destiny. This time, the witches reiterate that the sons of Banquo will rule over Scotland. They also add new prophecies. First, that Macbeth must beware of Macduff, a Scottish nobleman who opposed Macbeth's accession to the throne. Secondly, Macbeth will be invincible in battle until the time when the forest of Burnham moves towards Dunsinane Castle. And thirdly, until he meets an enemy not born of woman. Macbeth dismisses both of these predictions and feels secure because he knows that all men are born of women and that forests can never move. When he learns that Macduff has fled to England to join Malcolm, Macbeth gives orders to seize Macduff's castle and to murder Lady Macduff and her children. When the news of his family's execution reaches Macduff in England, he is stricken with grief and vows revenge. Prince Malcolm, Duncan's elder son, has succeeded in raising an army in England, and Macduff now joins him as he rides to Scotland to challenge Macbeth's forces. The invasion has the support of the Scottish nobles who are appalled and frightened by Macbeth's tyrannical and murderous behavior. If we analyze the events of the fourth act, we see that the shock of Banquo's ghost has unnerved Macbeth and he resolves to seek out the evil. It must be noted here that earlier the witches had come to him, but now Macbeth goes willingly to the witches, to the evil, to seek their help and allay his fears. Like Dr. Faustus, who seeks the devil in spite of getting all the warnings, Macbeth also goes to the evil voluntarily. And rather than being able to enjoy the fruits of his ambition, he becomes so obsessed with maintaining the power he has won. The murder of the innocent Lady Macduff and her young son marks the moment in which Macbeth descends into utter madness, proving him to be a complete despotic tyrant. With this, we come to the end of part 3. Welcome again to the fourth and the last part of the series on Macbeth. So far, we have seen Macbeth has become the King of Scotland after murdering Duncan, and this one murder has led to several other murders also. He has killed Banquo. He has also sent murderers to kill Macduff's wife and his son. Now, in the last act, the final act, Act 5, we see Lady Macbeth, who has become plagued with fits of sleepwalking. Her steely nerves have buckled under the strain of guilt. She walks with a candle in her hand. She seems to have blood on her hands and claims that nothing will ever wash it off. "Out, damned spot," she cries in one of the play's most famous lines, and adds, "Who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?" She further adds, "Here is the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." Her belief that nothing can wash away the blood is, of course, an ironic and painful reversal of her earlier claim to Macbeth that a little water clears us of this deed. Macbeth, too, is unable to sleep. The English army, led by Malcolm, moves forward. The Scottish army will meet them near Birnam Wood to join forces with them. Macbeth has fortified Dunsinane Castle and is making his military preparations in a fit of rage. Before Macbeth's opponents arrive, Macbeth receives news that Lady Macbeth has killed herself. When he hears the news of his wife's death, he sinks into a sense of deep despair. He had earlier begun to see the futility of his actions, but now it just overwhelms him. Macbeth's soliloquy following his wife's death is one of the most famous expressions of despair in all of literature. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools their way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. However, Macbeth awaits the English army, feeling assured that the witch's prophecies guarantee his invincibility. But when he learns that the English army, comprising 10,000 soldiers, is advancing on Dunsinane, shielded with boughs cut from Birnam wood, he is paralyzed with fear. Birnam wood is indeed coming to Dunsinane, fulfilling half of the witch's prophecy. His last ray of hope is suddenly removed, so he returns to the only power left in him, that of a warrior. His passionate and irrational self once again pushes him to take a sudden decision of leaving his castle and striking his enemies. But this is a fatal error. The valiant warrior who had saved Duncan's throne at the beginning of the play now goes out to fight against Duncan's son. In the battle, Macbeth strikes his enemies violently, but the English forces gradually overwhelm his army and his castle. On the battlefield, Macbeth encounters Macduff, who declares that he was not born of woman, but was instead untimely ripped from his mother's womb, what now we call birth by caesarean section. Though he realizes that he is doomed, Macbeth finds his courage and continues to fight until Macduff kills and beheads him. The play comes full circle. It begins with Macbeth winning on the battlefield and ends with him dying in combat. Malcolm is proclaimed the rightful king of Scotland. Order is restored to the state once more. Malcolm, now the King of Scotland, extends his generosity to all the thanes and invites all to see him crowned at Scone. The play reaches its final stage and all the events happen very fast in the fifth act. Lady Macbeth's frayed nerves are shattered under the burden of guilt. Her earlier resolve now gives way to sleepwalking and a delusional belief that her hands are stained with blood. "Out, damned spot," she cries in one of the play's most famous lines. Her belief that nothing can wash away the blood is, of course, an ironic and painful reversal of her earlier claim to Macbeth that a little water clears us of this deed. Macbeth also loses his sleep. His and Lady Macbeth's sleeplessness were foreshadowed by Macbeth's hallucination at the moment of murder, when he believed that a voice cried out, "Macbeth does murder sleep." In the most memorable sleepwalking scene of Lady Macbeth, Shakespeare has shown the poignant truth of how a self-assured person is finally destroyed from within by her own acts of commission and omission. The fact that both characters suffer and are tormented as a result of their actions suggests that they know in the innermost recesses of their heart what they have done is wrong. Their guilt prevents them from fully enjoying the power they craved. Lady Macbeth says, "What is done cannot be undone," but her guilt continues to torment her. While Macbeth's guilt causes him to commit further murders in an attempt to cover up his initial crimes, Lady Macbeth's guilt drives her to insanity and finally to suicide. At the end of the play, Macbeth has achieved all he wanted, but he is left with nothing. Macbeth sees the bitter truth of what his unchecked ambition has cost him, but his knowledge comes too late for him to correct the error of his ways. Like all Shakespearean tragedies, in Macbeth's final soliloquy, the particular becomes the universal. Macbeth is voicing for us a vision of life, that there is no meaning or purpose in life. Rather, life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. One can easily understand how, with his wife dead and armies marching against him, Macbeth succumbs to such pessimism. It is one of the most vehement and the most concentrated, perhaps the most tremendous of tragedies, says Dr. A.C. Bradley. To conclude, we can say that darkness broods over this tragedy. Almost all the scenes which at once recur to memory take place either at night or in some dark spot. The vision of the dagger, the murder of Duncan, the murder of Banquo, the sleepwalking of Lady Macbeth, all come in night scenes. And in its language, in its action, the drama is full of tumult and storm. Whenever the witches are present, we see and hear a thunderstorm. The frightful hurricane of the night when Duncan was murdered is also quite symbolic of what is going to happen in Macbeth's life. All the natural agencies like darkness, thunderstorm, howling of the winds, owls screaming during the night, raven croaking, crickets crying, light thickening after sunset, conspire with the supernatural elements such as the witches, the ghosts, to awaken horror and dread. Like other Shakespearean tragedies, the themes of deception, betrayal of trust, conflict between appearance and reality are carried out effectively in this tragedy also. Just as King Lear is betrayed by his own children, or Othello is deceived by Iago, the man he trusted the most, Macbeth also betrays the trust of the king. He kills him and ultimately invites his own death. Like all Shakespearean tragedies, this tragedy also leaves questions in our minds. It makes us re examine our lives with a new awareness of the eternal problems of our divided nature. So, with this, we come to the end of this series on Macbeth. I hope now you'll be able to read the play and also enjoy the soliloquies, the language, and the portrayal of human emotions in this sublime tragedy. Thank you all.